the experience with the Bulls at your high school put you on a path to national prominence in your first encounter with Shaquille O'Neal, whom you're referring to, then of the Orlando Magic. You even appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated for Kids back in 1996 with Shaq. So how did that whole opportunity come about, Amar?
Wow. So in October, when I got the press pass, first and foremost, I had no idea that this was ever going to happen. So when I got the press pass, I ended up getting one of those, those old cameras where you had like the disposable cameras from my dad's gas station, because I was like, I need to capture this. I had a tape recorder with me for my journalism class, and I ended up getting inside the old Orlando Arena, the old arena as we used to call it back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I go into the locker room, and there's nobody there except a couple of reporters, and they're all sitting next to Shaq, who's crouched down in his locker, sitting down. And even as he's sitting, he's taller than me. And as I'm slowly walking towards him, he's always had this like funny sense of humor, but I didn't know it at the time. So he's like staring at me as if like, what the hell is this kid doing here? And then he's like, I don't talk to reporters. And I said, come on, Shaq, I didn't even ask a question yet. I mean, can I just get a couple questions in? And he's like, I don't talk to reporters. He's like, but if you go over to that room, I might talk to you. So I thought he was joking. So I went, and it was like, I think it was the Rodney Powell, who was like the equipment manager. It was his room, right, where just to sit and hang out. So I'm sitting there in this like table. There's a TV blaring, and I'm like, this guy's just making me look like a fool. But as soon as I get up, I see this giant shadow walk through the door, like the door frame, right? And I look up, and there's Shaq in his uniform. He's got he's eating like a chicken sandwich or whatever it was, and then he sits down, and he's like, all right, man, what do you got? 30 minutes later, we're old friends. We talk about everything. We talk about growing up. We talk about girls. We talk about school. We talk about whatever it is. I think he ended up, I wanted him to call Janet Jackson, but he called somebody else. I think it was O.J. Simpson's daughter at the time, who he knew, and left a voicemail. But I really wanted to talk to Janet Jackson. I remember that at the time. And so I got this interview with Shaq, and then the reporters are asking me like, what was it like interviewing Shaq? And I told them, and I'm like in a haze the entire day. So then I got a photo with Shaq taken of me and him, and he's like kind of like holding me up a little bit. And I was like, all right, I got this awesome picture with Shaquille O'Neal, right? So that was the game. I don't know if you remember Matt Geiger, who used to be the
absolutely
the enforcer, true backup, if you will. And he sort of invented the hack of Shaq in a way before the Bulls did, where he actually hacked Shaq on his hand and broke his thumb, or fractured his thumb at the time. So that was the game that he got hurt. So I didn't get a chance to interview Shaq after the game. He left. So I was lucky enough to land the last interview with Shaq before he got hurt. And so what happened was I ended up writing an article about that for the Orlando Magic magazine. It became a big thing for a while, and I was like, oh, cool. Wow. It was incredible. But what I didn't know is that camera roll that I thought I got Shaq's photo in never developed. There was no exposure. So I had this photo where it's like literally like you can see like this like shiny thing, and there's like some abstract imagery, and it is of Shaq and me, but you can't use it anywhere. So I was really upset. So a couple months go by, and I'm like, all right, how do I continue doing this? I was writing for the school paper. I was writing articles about the basketball team, about this or that. And then I found out that Shaq's manager was building a restaurant near my school in the shopping center near like the Publix and the Kmart that was there at the time. So what I did is I went over to the restaurant and knocked on the door, which still had that sort of like brown paper bag, covering up construction.
Pre-opening look.
Mm-hmm. And then the manager, Shaq's manager, who was a guy named Dennis Tracy, he was his I think either college teammate and roommate later on. He opens the door, and he just asked me, he's like, hey, who are you? What's going on? Like, I introduced myself, told him who I was. He's like, oh, tomorrow we're going to go to Shaq's house, and we're doing the Shaq Claus event. That's the charity event where he would give out toys to all these underprivileged kids. He's like, you can tag along if you want. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. So got my mom's approval. I remember Dennis Tracy picked me up from my house. He had a 500 SL green Benz, and I still, to my day, this is one of my favorite cars. Then what happened? We go to Shaq's house in Isleworth. And Shaq's house, even now, even though he sold it, is just like iconic. It's Shaquille O'Neal's crib. And I'm there. I have lunch. His chef makes me a meal. Then I go with Dennis to the Boys and Girls Club. And, we're waiting. Like, all the kids are out there. There's police, all the, and everyone's parents. And Shaq arrives with his cousin. And I was like, yo, and I introduced him, and he recognized me. And then for the whole day, we hang out. He ends up dropping me home, but first he takes me on a shopping spree at the Orlando Magic Fanatic. I get a new pair of Jordans. I get a pair of Shaq Gnosis. I was like, a kid at Toys R Us. Then he gives me a ride home. So he calls my dad. My dad doesn't believe that Shaq, is giving me a ride. So then we go to my house. My mom looks up and she's like, Shaquille O'Neal's in our house. And he's like the nicest person. Even to this day, my parents were like, he's like the most, he took his shoes off, hung out with my brother and me. We played basketball in our backyard. He autographed whatever we asked him to, took photos with us. And then he's like, oh, I gotta run. And yeah, that was my holiday visit with Shaquille O'Neal. So that goes by. Then I end up contacting Slam Magazine. And they hire me to write for them as a freelance reporter. So I became the youngest writer for them at 15 years old. And then I was going to Orlando Magic games, writing profiles on different players. And so Shaq and I formed a friendship over that time period. And then I was pitching the idea of the story to different magazines. Then Sports Illustrated for Kids is like, hey, we like this story. Can you write it? So then I wrote it. And they're like, oh, we want to do a photo shoot. They didn't tell me that it was going to be a cover photo. So then Shaq comes to my school and we do the entire photo shoot in the media center of Dr. Phillips High School. So he rolls up in his Mercedes. Everybody's like, oh my God. And then, we do this photo shoot where I'm wearing his uniform yeah, exactly. I was standing on an apple box as he's kind of picking me up. And then I found out later that it was going to be on the cover. And to this day, you can still find me on eBay, for different price points of the issue. But the cool thing is I actually own the highest graded issue of the magazine.